What's going on, y'all? Today we got the legend of Dr. J, the man who flew. We're gonna split this one up into two parts, man. Make sure the quality's good and the computer don't start getting hot and the camera don't start lagging. We can't be having that, so we're gonna split it up into two parts. Let's get into
Legends. The players that are remembered long after their playing days end, and indeed long after they too pass. The players that live on in mythology and reverence, that have influenced the game we see today. They are players who have set records, won championships, and captured our attention, etching their legacies into the foundations of this game. A legend is special, not simply because their talent set them apart, but because their stories transcend the individual. In fact, to me, that is what a legend is. A remarkable player who tells a story that enthralls us. So today, I'd like to talk about the legend of Dr. J. Julius Winfield Erving II, also known as Dr. J. If you know anything about him, you know that he is unequivocally the coolest basketball player of all time. If you don't, consider this your education. As an introduction, just check out this picture from Doc's days playing with the New York Nets in the late 70s in the ABA. Just on appearance alone, I don't think you can get much cooler. The afro, the gold, the goatee, even the red, white, and blue of the uniform just make this guy look like the quintessential basketball player. And in a way, that's exactly what he was. He spent the prime of his career in the ABA, a renegade basketball league full of wackos and nutjobs at every level, that sold themselves as the energetic, fast-paced foil to the NBA's slower, methodical style. To the people that really care about the sport, Doc remains a living legend, a guy who defined his era culturally and aesthetically, propelling the sport of basketball into the modern age. He wasn't supposed to be. Julius Erving was a lightly recruited forward out of high school and ended up playing at the University of Massachusetts. He had great measurables, incredibly long arms, and hands that you had to see to believe. According to sources I could find, his hand was 9.5 inches long from the base of his palm to the tip of his middle finger, and when splayed out, measured 11.5 inches from the tip of his thumb to the tip of his pinky. Ironically, the year before his first varsity season, college basketball's ruling body had banned players from dunking the basketball. Erving made do and focused his game in other ways, perfecting sweeping layups and finger rolls while finding a knack for rebounding, often skying high above the heads of others and grabbing the ball out of the air with a single hand. Julius experienced remarkable success in his first varsity season, averaging over 20 points and over 20 rebounds for the entire season. Still, on an obscure basketball program in a nearly unheard of conference, his imagination had never once wandered toward professional basketball. In the summer before his junior year of college, Julius found himself back home in New York City, spending his days tearing across the city's renowned street courts. There, on the most famous street court in the mecca of the basketball world, the Rucker Park in Harlem, Julius Erving made a name for himself. And the name was Dr. J. While Erving had never been allowed to dunk in college, here players were only limited by their creativity and daring. Totally unleashed from the restrictions of collegiate hoops, Julius would submit dunks, rebounds, blocks, and layups that started drawing crowds from all over the city. As it was happening, crowds and MCs searched for a fitting nickname. They tried things like the Hawk and the Pearl after Connie Hawkins and Earl Monroe. They tried Black Jesus, Moses, and so on. But none of them really stuck. In his childhood, though, Julius had nicknamed one of his friends who had a penchant for long-winded arguments the Professor. Tickled by this, the friend declared that if he were the professor, then Julius should be the doctor, so as to form a complete duo. So as the search for Erving's nickname continued, he finally declared himself that if he were to be called anything, he should be called the Doctor. The Doctor became Dr. Julius, and Dr. Julius became Dr. J. Before long, the city's pro ranks, real bona fide NBA players, started to show up to test the mettle of this Dr. J. Nobody could stop the doctor. For the first time in his life, Julius Erving entertained the idea that he just might have what it takes to break into the professional ranks of basketball. After another 2020 season, Dr. J did just that. He took his chance and joined the ABA. After that junior year, a 21-year-old Julius Erving accepted a 4-year contract to join the Virginia Squires. Again though, this was not seen as a major steal or a poaching job. Most people had still never heard of Julius Erving, and even if they had, it wasn't like he was any kind of real star. In fact, the Squires owner barely knew anything about Doc when he signed him. But as he walked away from their first meeting, he remarked to somebody nearby, "Hey, did you see the meat hooks on that guy?" Julius Erving debuted as a professional basketball player for the Virginia Squires in the 1971-1972 season. In that first season, he proved that he did belong as a professional, making the All-Star team and being named to the second team All-ABA. That first season was good enough that it ignited one of the crazier contract disputes in basketball history, which included a crooked agent and 3 different teams in 2 different leagues. I highly recommend you look it up. It is bonkers. You know what else is bonkers? That's right, baby. The sponsor of today's video, Factor.
Get your money, Mom. Better get your money.
To cook
Get your
that
money.
product. That's go.factor75.com/clicks. He returned to the Squires for the 73 season and enjoyed a breakout year, leading the league in scoring, making first team All-ABA, and again being named an All-Star. He had quickly become the young face of the ABA, the most entertaining, energizing player in a sport that was looking for exactly that. So of course, the Squires sold his contract to the New York Nets for cash. Because, you know, the ABA was insane. Which brings us to the good stuff. The peak of Dr. J's powers. Doc spent his apex years with the Nets, winning the ABA League MVP award in 1974, 75, and 76.
Sheesh.
Those years saw his fame and
I know they
talent
was
pass
hyped that
beyond
they traded
superstar
him, man.
status and into legend. He had maintained his rebounding prowess, developed into an above-average passer for his position, and delighted at using his physical talents to strip opponents and block shots. But the lasting effect of Julius Erving's prime was the weaponization of the slam dunk. Perhaps no player is more synonymous with the dunk than Julius Erving. In the 60s, Elgin Baylor ignited a spark, taking something that had previously been reserved for centers as a show of brute force and power, and had infused it with a level of excitement. Doc took that spark and created an inferno. When Doc attacked the basket, he became a wizard, an innovator, doing things that no one had thought possible. He injected style, creativity, artistry, and individuality with his acrobatics. Exactly what the ABA and the sport of basketball as a whole needed. I can't emphasize the point enough. The dunk is to basketball what the home run is to baseball because of Dr. J. There were players who dunked before him, and there have been players who dunked after. But what is still perhaps the most exciting moment of a basketball game, the moment when a player is streaking down the court, loads his power into his lead foot, picks up his dribble, and skies towards the rim, was the signature move of the Doctor. And to watch him do it with those mitts, the way he picks up the ball like it's nothing, it looked like he was made to do it. He was unarguably the most exciting basketball player in any league. And yet his legend propagated in a way that was almost totally unique to him. The ABA did not have a national TV deal, so it spread through word of mouth and written accounts. Imagine that. An athlete that defied imagination, that left every spectator, reporter, and opponent speechless with his ability, but who the vast majority of fans could not see. His feats became mythical, similar to someone like Andre the Giant. His reputation became almost folklore, making no story seem too outlandish. He jumped 12 feet in the air, he took off from half court, he could have dunked on a 20-foot rim. Of course, the stories were hyperbole, but they only served to further prop him up as this practically alien athlete. Dr. J became a legend before some people even knew what he looked like. Like he was some powerful storm advancing toward land. One with a name and a face and a power that you know is out there, but that you just have no way of seeing yet. His first 2 seasons with the Nets were nothing short of incredible, They'd won the championship in '74, Doc had won back-to-back MVP awards and collected every award the ABA had to offer. And all of a sudden, the ABA had a sense of legitimacy. Few games were sellouts, even for the Nets. But the ABA was the place where the doctor played. While Kareem was still unquestionably the best player in the world, Julius Erving was the essential basketball player. While Kareem was utilizing the skyhook, a mechanical, repetitive, boring move that still stands as the most awesome weapon in basketball history, Dr. J was soaring, employing the skills of improvisation, unpredictability, and excitement, moving in ways that you can't predict or even recognize, let alone get in front of. If he wasn't already, by this point he was the ABA's meal ticket. The league's commissioner, Dave DeBusschere, said that while many players might get called the franchise, Dr. J was the league. And if his pure skill and intensity had not already made him the most valuable attraction in basketball, it cannot go overlooked that Julius Erving goes down as one of the classiest athletes in any sport ever. Throughout his career, he was known to wait in the locker room, giving interviews and answering questions until every last fan had an autograph, every notepad was filled, every tape recorder run empty. He was articulate, intelligent, gracious, patient, and humble to an astonishing degree, as reported by nearly every human being who he has ever come into contact with. Bill Daniels, the owner of the Utah Stars, a rival ABA team, even wrote Erving an unadulterated fan letter, gushing in adoration. When the 1975-76 season started, the NBA and the ABA were on a collision course for a merger. To say that the doctor was the only reason for the merger is an overstatement. The Oscar Robertson versus NBA antitrust lawsuit had been settled, and the ABA had been successful in recruiting many great talents, including players like David Thompson, Artis Gilmore, George Gerving, and Moses Malone. The fast-paced style of the Renegade League and its innovations like the three-point shot were similarly valuable commodities. But make no mistake, the blue chip in the merger was Dr. J. More than anything, the NBA needed him. The New York Times wrote that the NBA without the doctor was like boxing without Ali. As the paperwork was drafted and the lawyers began organizing such a merger, the ABA embarked on what would be its final season. Doc continued to do Doc stuff, leading the league in scoring, winning his third consecutive MVP, made first team All-Defense, first team All-ABA, was an All-Star, and had one of his many iconic moments when he measured his steps and took off from the free throw line in January's dunk contest. Usual Doc stuff. And remember, there were only 7 teams that played the full season, so take these stats with a grain of salt, but he finished in the league's top 10 in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game, blocks per game, free throw percentage, free throws made, three-point percentage, and three-pointers made. After a 7-game grind against the San Antonio Spurs in the playoffs, the Nets reached the ABA Finals against the Denver Nuggets. There, against a Nuggets team that featured 3 future Hall of Famers in David Thompson, Dan Issel, and Bobby Jones, coached by future Hall of Fame Larry Brown, Julius Erving submitted his magnum opus. Jones was the man tasked with guarding Erving for the series, and was probably the most qualified man in the basketball world for the job. In the NBA, he would go on to make 8 straight defensive first teams, and earned the nickname the Secretary of Defense. Doc embarrassed him.
Sheesh.
In Game 1, Doc scored 45 points on 68% shooting, ripped down 12 rebounds, scored 18 of the Nets' last 22 points, and hit the game-winning shot at the buzzer. He followed it up with 48 points.
Finished them. Then another 48. Yo, bro. Stay tuned for part 2, yeah. We about to do part 2 right after this one, man. I think we could get... Nah, we better wait 30 minutes, but you know what I'm saying? We're gonna get it done. It's gonna be an hour later for y'all. Don't trip, man. If you enjoyed, make sure you click on the last reaction, share the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. And I'm out of here, man.